Hi guys, Quinn Hendricks here. I just wanted to extend a thank you to you guys for letting me review the games that you guys are putting out and make sure that the games that you guys are releasing to the public are one responsible to entertaining for all of them, and just a couple other small things I've done through my research that I think could really help out your guys' company. And I just wanted to say thank you guys. So without further ado, I'm going to start to go into some of the slides I've done throughout my research that I think might be beneficial for you guys' company. Awesome. All right, so first and foremost, ensuring that the game is entertaining. It's very important for a company to produce entertaining games. Otherwise, you're going to run into some problems with retention of people playing the games. Even though violent video games are very appealing in this day and age, that's not necessarily the only way to have a high value game. For example, Wii Sports, Tetris, Minecraft, and countless other games are do a lot better overall than some games like Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty that have high violence in the video games. So some of the ways that video games can negatively affect an audience are through addiction, social isolation, violent behavior, and even damage to their vision, brain development, memory, and causing them stress. So later in this presentation, we will dive a little bit deeper into all of these, but I just wanted to give you guys a basic understanding of some of the implications that can come from these video games. So, video game addiction is one of the largest negative side effects that we see in the modern day gaming world. The World Health Organization has deemed gaming disorder a severe problem and have actually gotten some sort of official documents stating that it is a problem. It's even gone as far as to put people in rehabilitation centers for gaming. China is actually the gaming problem has gotten so large there that they have set curfews on video games, and minors are restricted to playing 90 minutes of video gaming a during the weekdays and 3 hours during the weekends. And this is a large shock and speaks a lot to the problem due to China having the largest video game market in the entire world. So, with a rise in popularity of violent video games, leads to a couple potential concerns of these video games as well. The first is the general aggression model. And this suggests that when aggressive scripts and schematas are primed, it becomes easier for the consumer to think about aggression and ultimately easier for them to act on aggression. This model also suggests that violence in video games can lead to short and long term spikes in aggression. As in, the more you practice a violent video game, the more accessible violence becomes to the consumer. Dehumanization is another concern, and it is when youth players begin to dehumanize the objects within the video game. This can become a major problem as it can lead to aggressive behaviors outside of the game, which they don't understand. Biological disposition to aggressive content is another thing we've been looking into, as in when these children are exposed to so much aggression through these video games, it can kind of alter their decision making and make them choose aggressive aggression, ultimately leading them to aggression acts of violence. Lastly, there's just an overall concern for violent video games. As you can see, as seen in the media, you just don't want your children playing violent video games because it sends the wrong message to them, even if they understand what's real and what's not. Just being exposed to so much aggression, so much violence, can really have some negative consequences on these children. So there's definitely some concrete evidence behind the concerns that I just noted on. The first big one is a decrease in empathy for the consumers of these violent video games, as in they don't empathize with their surrounding violence and aggression, as in they don't really care as much and they don't think it's as bad. Because they're so used to aggression and violence in these video games. Another one is it is linked to delinquency in minors, such as fighting with peers in their classes or just being very violent towards their parents, things like that. And lastly, a pretty big one is in adults, we see violent criminal acts such as armed robbery, burglary, and also things such as domestic violence and things like this. So now that I've touched on some of these concerns, is there any validity behind them? And to me, there's not. They are not very valid. There has been a slight rise in aggression, but this is from a very small subject of the population. A article that I read from CNBC actually stated that over 70% of high school students are playing violent video games, and only 20% of school shooters have played them prior to committing their crime. Another article that I read from Forbes actually states that there's a lot of beneficial things that can come from playing these video games for teenagers, such as hand-eye coordination and better cognitive processing. So this is just a graph that I pulled from a Forbes article that I was reading that is actually states that, as you can see, as time has gone on, video game sales have gone up, while youth violence has actually been going down pretty substantially from the 1990s. And I just thought this was a very interesting graph that kind of proves that violent video games do not have a direct correlation to youth violence here in the United States. So the last thing I want to touch on here in this presentation is the limiting the impacts of these violent video games. And the first thing is making them animated or unrealistic. It kind of detaches the real life application of the violence in the video games. The next thing is let the potential concerns be known to the consumer of the video game, or if they're younger, let their parents know. Set reminders, set time limits. Make sure that they know that there is some concerns with these video games. As you can see from this graph here, provided by Empowering Parents, 97% of parents report that they do, in fact, actually monitor their kids' gameplay, which means we are on the right track towards restrictions and things of that nature. I just wanted to give you guys a final goodbye and thank you guys once again for letting me help out your video game development company. And I hope that the information that I've provided will help you guys in the near future. This next slide is just my references from the research that I conducted. And thank you guys so much.